Hello and welcome. Okay, so let's do a check-in. So we started, Miss Catherine, we started with you, and apparently your computer is Caputo, and
Yes.
your backup computer is annoyingly Caputo as well, but still manages to hump along.
Yes.
That's where we left off.
I have been able to fix a big plot hole.
Okay.
So I was able to cross the bridge of, hey, this villain shows up, disappears, and then shows back up for the ending. So I was able to bridge that section finally. And then I got up to the start of when my book splits. So my book will give you two separate endings. The reader gets to pick which character they want to follow to the end of the book.
Whoa. So I've never seen this other than like choose your own adventure book. So is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, because my two characters, in order to finish the work that they do, have to go in separate directions
Okay.
to shut down it from two different sides. And instead of doing the back and forth chapter, which was like bothering me, I split it. So at that point, you can either read Eleanor's side as she goes and shuts it down, or you can read Theodore's and how he goes and shuts it down from the other end.
So you've got a page that says to follow Theodore's adventure, switch to page 533 or something like that, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And then there is
That's
the
really
epilogue
interesting.
that pulls them back together because they
Okay.
both, it leaves off with you believe one of them has died.
Okay. So speaking structurally here, then, do you have, oh no, there's no connecting at all because you said they go separately. So if a
Yep.
reader wanted to read both, they could go back and reread from where she left
Yeah.
off.
So
And
pretty
it's
much
not going to be like a repeat of anything.
no, there's maybe two scenes that would get repeated throughout it.
But you've written
One
it
of them,
slightly different so that it could
yeah,
be reread and not be boring.
yeah.
Okay. That
So
is
it,
really interesting and unique. I have never, ever seen a book do that.
yeah. Like I
So,
said, I got really annoyed with jumping back and forth between because he's on a whole different side of the city than she is. So she goes to the location to shut down the slave trade, and he goes to the docks to shut down the ships being able to leave with the women.
do you have them come back together? You said they come back together in the epilogue?
Yes. So that's the only time that, like, because they technically shut it down,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I leave off the story. You believe one of them has died. The epilogue continues a few days after that has been shut down. It's interesting.
It is interesting. I'm intrigued. And if you can pull it off, it might be like absolutely fantastic. But I'm curious why you were annoyed with the back and forth. Was that because you knew the answer and you just wanted to get there? Why do you think that the reader would be annoyed?
I guess because most of the book is third person omniscient, I want to say is the right word. So I jump all over the place. So you can follow any character who is in that chapter. You know what's going on with everybody.
So you're a
And
head
then
hopper.
I am a head hopper. I
Do you
correctly
separate
head
it
hop.
by like scene at all?
No, it's usually by paragraph. So like if I'm doing a section, I try to make it as smooth as I can. The later in the book, it becomes much more smooth than the beginning. The beginning was real rough.
Okay.
And it does like shift enough where you know whose point of view you're in. And I
Have you
usually,
had a diagnostic done on this?
not yet.
Okay.
I'm almost there.
Okay. Who's doing the diagnostic?
Aaron has offered to read
Okay.
through it
Okay.
because he's like, I hate head hopping, and I was like, everybody does, but if you
Everybody
do
hates
it,
head hopping. There's two people that I can kind of hump through a little bit as authors because the other part of the writing style is amazing and I'm willing to
and
ignore that.
I love the head hopping. I have
Okay, if
always
you love
loved
it and you can pull it off and
it.
you have people that love to read it and will follow you along, then awesome. That's rad. I guess what I was trying to get at before with the switching back and forth is if it's just that you didn't like going from chapter her, chapter him, chapter her, chapter him, you don't have to do that. You can just be like following her for a few chapters and then switch over. What do you want to say anything, Leanne? Because you
Yeah,
write
go for it.
romance, so you probably have multiple points of view characters, yeah?
I have written them. I guess my question is, what's your genre again? It's steampunk,
So I'm
right?
a dark steampunk mysteries with romance. Is kind of.
So, yeah. I would say if you're going to be careful. So, if you're going to call it romance, and it's these two people, they have to come back together before the epilogue to bring their happily ever after. You'll get slammed really hard if you don't have that. I mean, it's great to have the epilogue at the end, but they need to come together to show that their romance tied back together. Otherwise, I would just drop romance altogether from the genre that you're going to market.
You could still have romantic elements in it, obviously,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be marketed as a romance.
Cool, because I like the kiss scene never happens in my story. It was one of my biggest things that I was like, these characters will never get to kiss on scene. Like throughout the entire book, they come very close to it. It drove one of my alpha readers insane. They're like, he never got the kiss. And I was like, yeah, I know. It cuts it off right before you get to see it. It's great.
So maybe this is not a romance then.
That's fine. It's got romance elements.
Romance. Yeah, so I would drop romance. So that's going to help you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'd say is be really careful with mystery and having omniscient, because the whole point of the mystery is people don't know what's going to happen, right? You're kind of stuck with your character trying to figure it out. And if you're in this omniscient, then everybody knows, the reader knows everything that's going on. And they don't have that kind of drive for a mystery to say, I have got to figure out what's happening, right? Who's the bad guy? And when you have that, you kind of lose that. So I would be really careful, again, saying it's a mystery, because they're not going to have any mystery behind it with the way that you have that written. Not that I've read it to be sure, because I hate head hopping too. I'm not a big head hopper. I have heard people write kind of a choose your own adventure or ending type story, and it's worked well for them. But they weren't romance either. Like I said, in romance, the idea is they come together. They're together at the end. They don't have their separate endings.
So maybe this is fantasy then. Steampunk falls under fantasy, right?
Dark steampunk.
Yeah, dark steampunk fantasy. Is steampunk fantasy?
It can be fantasy or it could be science fiction. It really just depends on, like, a lot of it's if you have a magic system, then it falls more into the fantasy side.
Okay.
I don't have a magic system.
So
I think it would fall more into the sci-fi side.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe right at this moment isn't the best time to come up with the genre, although I think it helps in knowing like the obligatory scenes and the endings and stuff, but it is kind of a marketing issue, and while you're first drafting, I wouldn't necessarily, get too hung up on that, but yeah, in terms of knowing it's not a romance, or if it is a romance, having to structure it a different way.
And I guess to get back to why I separated them is because during those sections, you pretty much only followed them. So as like the climax hits, and then it's this is how we're going to solve this, and you follow the two different ones solving the issues. So I guess I think
that's
that
a
was
big
fun.
theme. That's a pretty big theme in fantasy. Like if you look at how Robert Jordan wrote his books, if you've ever read any Robert Jordan or any other epic fantasy, I used to hate Perrin. I still hate Perrin.
I know.
I would skip his sections, right? He was in there for, 4 or 5 really long chapters. You're talking like 100 pages or so. So I think the expectation of the people in that genre, and that's why I was asking what genre. If you were doing something like romance, right? You can switch POVs, but the expectation is pretty much one chapter at a time, maybe 2. They want to see that interaction between the people. But if you're talking like an epic sci-fi or epic fantasy, I think you're fine with showing both, and having them follow what's going on. Because by this time, since your book's so long, your readers are going to love your characters. They're going to want to read both anyway. So
Yeah, I hope.
telling them to go one way or the other, I think they're going to go back and reread it anyways. Regardless of where you tell them to go, kind of like Valerie was saying.
Well, cool. I think that it'll be interesting once you've had the diagnostic to get the feedback of like, did this work, or, should it be merged somehow, or, I mean, it's a literary decision, obviously,
Yeah.
a structural thing. So, okay. So you've got the bridge plot hole section done. And then any other wins you want to celebrate right now?
My laptop hasn't shut off right now.
The second one?
Yeah, it likes to suddenly freeze and shut off and not exist.
When are you supposed to get the replacement from
Within
Microsoft?
another week.
Within
So
another week.
Yeah, so I have a week technically left.
Okay. Well, fingers
Yeah, I've been
crossed.
using my phone. I've been using the work computer at work. When I have free time, I can sit there and they're fine with me writing. So I've been trying to like get as much as I could in there, but this poor laptop it's on its dying leg.
Oh, sorry. I hope that gets resolved
Me too.
soon rather than later. Okay, Leanne, let's do your wins. What have you done in the last couple weeks since we talked last?
So I got about 10,000 words written, not in what I was supposed to be writing on.
That still counts.
Yeah, I know. It's just, this is the way my brain works, but I try to write what's in my mind, because if I try to force something else, I'm never happy with it. So I just wrote the words. It was on the Ruin story, even though I wanted to write on Secrets, so that's the book that's supposed to be coming out next. And then I got about 35-ish thousand words edited.
Nice.
So then went back in and from the beginning of the Ruins and re-edited it, changed some of the components that I wasn't happy with. So it's done, it's ready to go. But I'm not going to relaunch that until I have book 2 ready. So then I'm gonna recover, not really rebrand other than the recover, and put it out there. So that's what most of my time was spent on. And I signed up for an anthology so I could do a prequel for this, for the Ruin story.
That sounds
and
cool.
Write a piece of,
when is that due?
I have some time. It's not due until like the end of next year.
Okay.
And it only has about 25,000 words, so I can get that out pretty quick.
25. Okay. Any other wins? Did you finally did you look through the email that I sent with the people, the links to their JP and Stephanie Bond and Christine? Did you get that email?
Like I said, I saw them and I went and saved them for my junk mail, but I haven't had a chance to read through all of them yet.
Okay.
But that's on my schedule for later today and tomorrow. I'm off work for the next 3 days, so I have some time.
3 days. Nice. It's like a little writing retreat.
Yeah.
More like catch up on all the crap stuff, right?
That's about what happens. Either that or my kids drag me in to do something, or my husband does. So
How old are your
maybe
kids?
2 days before. My kids are 16 and 17.
Oh, that's good. So you're the chauffeur, but you can tell them to bug off if you need to.
I made my husband chauffeur. When COVID hit, we sold our other car
Okay.
because it just sat in my garage. And now that I work virtual. I don't have to drive into work. I'm like, why are we paying for a car? Because in California, don't know how much you know about California, is very
Gas prices
expensive.
are up.
So we decided to sell it and not have to pay the insurance and all the other lovely things that go along with the car here in California. So my husband chauffeurs everyone, including me, when I need to go somewhere.
Catherine, you're in Buffalo, New York, right?
No, I'm in Plattsburgh near Burlington. Or
So-
about 45 minutes from Montreal.
In New York?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Plattsburgh.
right at the border. So like here's Vermont, and then here's us,
Okay.
and then here's Canada.
Okay. Often do you go to Montreal?
I've only been once, which like I should go more often because
Right?
it's about an hour away, depending on the border, but I also don't have a car, so. And they shut down all the buses again, so Montreal won't do buses down to New York anymore.
Oh, because
And-
of COVID.
Yeah, and then the trains never reopened, and they're not going to reopen them for the Adirondacks.
Hmm.
So everything above Albany doesn't have a train anymore.
Wow. Sounds like you need a car. But a laptop first.
Yeah, laptop first, then car.
Okay. Leanne, did you set up the pre-order for Secrets Book 3?
No, I wimped out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna get a little closer to done, and then I'll set it once I start the editing process. So
okay, that's a good plan.
There you
I'm
go.
gonna adjust this then. Set when start editing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said you worked on some Ruins stuff. Did you create the chapter outline for Ruins book 2?
no, I pantsed it.
Okay. So that's not needed anymore. Can I cross that off the list?
I still need to do it. I
Okay.
do better with a very high level outline
Right.
because I don't go in detail it, but I at least want to know what I'm trying to accomplish in each chapter.
Right.
So I need to do that still.
Okay. And then you wanted to write 4 new chapters and you did that in a different book. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I did it in the wrong book.
That's okay.
It's not a wrong book, it's just a
No.
different one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then let's see, Catherine, did you go through your calendar planner and block off all of your vacation time and travel time and holidays and library work time and stuff?
So I have the library time done.
Mm-hmm.
And I have set days, so I am off Wednesday, Thursday, and Sundays. So that's set for the summer.
Okay.
The things that I don't know are those little like, hey, suddenly a trip has come up, or hey, we're going to this wedding.
Well, you wouldn't know that, I guess, until it showed up. But if you know
Yeah.
it already, I just wanted you to have that in your book so you knew, okay, I'm not going to be writing on this day because.
Mhm. The only other thing that throws me off is when the freelance work comes in, because
Mhm.
we write articles for the paper,
Mhm.
and it's whenever they get it, they'll ship it out with a date to me. So that's the only other thing that
So
I
whenever
don't
you,
know until the month. So like
Until
I
the
know
month.
for July, I don't know for August.
okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, as soon
Yeah,
as you
so,
get
like,
that
I've marked
information.
into
Yeah.
July.
Okay. And you already blocked off the times for Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday. Cross
Yes.
that off. Did you schedule August and September with your line editor?
I would have, but she was sick with COVID, so I just let her be since she got hit pretty hard.
Okay. We can always
So
email too and just say, hey, I want to block this off your calendar.
yeah,
She can read her email. And
I
even
just
if
feel
she
like
doesn't,
I
it's
don't know.
there.
It feels like it's rude to be like, oh, I know you're dying and you're sick. I need you for August. Like,
But she's going to want to know that.
true.
Okay. So did you finish the plot hole on, you said you
Yes.
finished one or you bridged one, but was that the one?
I bridged that one and I just have to correct one section in her spot.
Okay.
So like his is fine. It's her zone that it got connected to. So I haven't fully finished it.
Okay.
Almost. I'm
So
sorry.
finish her. What's hers name?
Oh, Eleanor.
Eleanor.
Eleanor
Finish.
Leonard.
Finish Eleanor's plot. It's not a hole anymore. It's a wrinkle.
Sure.
Okay. Did you run the passive voice report with AutoCrit?
Not yet. I wanted to finish that section and then
Yeah,
I have to
good
go
point.
back to the beginning and finish. So I do know that these
Okay.
later chapters are better because as I'm looking through them, I'm like, oh, it's not as bad. It's the beginning that needs a lot of work.
Cool. All right. So, and then I did get your email about wanting the publishing checklist, but in little chunks,
Yes,
one at a
because
time.
my
Because
initial
ADHD.
response
Yeah.
is yes, send me the whole thing. And then my ADHD brain goes,
Yeah.
you send me the whole thing and I'm gonna toss it to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. Executive function is a drag sometimes.
Because I like to-do lists, but if there's so much on there, it seems to almost shut me down. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, I'll just put it to the side.
Yeah.
I'll get to it eventually.
Okay. Leanne, let's see. We went through your list already that I mailed you. So you're going to relaunch Ruins Book 1 after Book 2 is all ready and recovered. Is that right?
Yeah, I was gonna do, I haven't decided exactly how I was gonna do it, but it was gonna be relaunch book 1 with the changes that I made, and then put book 2 up for a pre-order, but maybe just like a month later, and then do a big push for book 2. And
With
then hopefully have
ads?
book 3
Is that what you
order
mean?
so I can link. I'm sorry?
You said you were going to do a big push after the Book 2 pre-order goes out. So did you mean
Yep.
that with ads, or what does push mean?
So I'm not quite sure how I want to do it. Ads right now are kind of iffy. Not sure what's going on. But Amazon keeps changing some things there, which is causing some problems. So it'll probably be a combination of Facebook ads. I know quite a few other authors in my genre, so seeing if I could do some newsletter swaps. A lot of them will share the book for me, so that will help.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if possible, maybe try to do a book bub or something else on book 1 to help get some read through.
Okay. And this is all for Ruins. And so relaunching book 1, you edited. Which story did you do the 10K words on? That was book 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you did 35K words of editing in book 1.
Yeah, I added a little bit, but I wouldn't count them as, they're words, right? But I probably removed more words than I added.
The time definitely counts.
Yep.
Okay, so you're focusing, at least in the last 2 weeks, you've been focusing on rewriting book 1.
Yes.
Okay. How much more time do you feel like you have left on that? You said you needed to change some components, but what?
Nope, I got it all fixed in editing.
Okay, so you're done. You're done with book one.
Yep,
Okay.
but at least I'm not gonna hold off on it until I'm ready to do book two, and then I'll pull book one, recover, relaunch.
Recover and relaunch.
Yeah, the only thing I hate about that fact that I'll lose all of my reviews.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm going to be doing the same. I'm not rewriting my novel, but I do need, it's not selling. And so the response I'm getting is, or the suggestions I'm getting from the people in the industry that I've checked in with are recovering it for sure. And maybe even retitling it. So if I retitle it, then I'm going to have to do a new ISBN and I'll lose all the reviews and stuff. So I haven't quite decided on the retitling thing yet. I mean, I will if it sells, but.
Yeah. I mean, the blurb was the other thing that people told me to look at to see if it wasn't hitting the right notes, you know, things. And I haven't reblurbed it in a while to pull out those big keywords that people would look for. So I probably will redo my blurb on book one too.
And then on book two, you did 10K words on this. So where are you in that? Are you still just at the beginning of book two? I forget from last time when you.
Yeah, so it just started.
So, okay.
I'll probably end up revising some of it when I actually plot it out to make sure I didn't miss anything. I like to put those, you know, those little foreshadowing components in there. And it's hard to do when you're a pantser, right? Because I don't know what I'm aiming towards.
Yeah.
It happens. So I'll probably end up doing some pretty heavy revision once I have the plot out there, so I can make sure I can put those nuggets for people to miss and then go back and be like, oh, how did I miss that? Because I love those when I read.
Yeah. And I don't know how they're constructed. How do you construct it? Do you just sort of reverse engineer it? Like by the end of the book, okay, at this point in the book, we're going to need something. What could that thing be? And stick it in there. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the story and what I'm trying to aim towards. So one of my books that's done that I co-wrote, the main character's little brother collected rocks, and she was able to use one of the rare stones that was in there later on in the story to help defeat the bad guy, because the bad guy is the one that killed the brother. So we wanted to bring it full circle. You know, the little brother was part of, you know, taking out the guy that killed him and the rest of the family. So it's just little things like that we, you know, but I try to go in and add. And like I said, sometimes I have to go backwards, and sometimes I throw in random things. I'm like, how can I use that later in the story? And so I might go and adjust my plot a little bit to say, I really like that component. Let's use it later on for something.
I forget. Do you use Scrivener? I can't remember.
I have it. I don't use it.
Okay. Just wondering.
I put everything in Google.
In Google?
Yeah.
That makes sense if you're co-writing though, because you need to be able to do that at the same time. So how is Lynn, right? Is that her name? Is that going to reconnect then, or have you had an opportunity to talk with her about that?
Yep. So we're going to, we still have 4 more books in the one series that we need to write. We just hadn't figured out timing. I think she's to a point now she's ready to work on some of that. So we're just going to take it slow for the first one and see how she does.
And then what's the name? No expectations. Yeah. What's the name of that series? Just so I can keep it straight in my notes.
That is Spearwood Academy.
Spirit Academy. Is that what we said?
Spearwood.
Spearwood.
SPEARWOOD. Spearwood.
Okay. Go slow, no expectations for first book or next book, I guess.
It's out on pre-order, by the way. It's not written yet.
Uh-huh.
So we might.
I've never had the guts to do a pre-order. So if you, and I know if you miss the pre-order date, then you could be like
Analyzed.
wrist slapped for a year or something
Yep.
like that. So can you cancel a pre-order and just say, forget about it, I'm not writing this book or or whatever? Or do you still get penalized for that?
We did pull one when we stopped doing the one series, and just emailed Amazon and told them, here's what's going on. Now it's a little different because we set up a micro publisher, so it's a business and not one of us individually.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we get a little bit more flexibility as a business
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do some of that. I mean, because we have hundreds of books that we've published through our publisher, so that helped. But yeah, they were, we got the slap on the wrist and said, don't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we won't do it again. But we had done pre-orders, so when we started co-writing, we actually started like 6 to 9 months before we were ready to actually sell them.
Okay.
So we ended up with probably 4 books, maybe 4 or 5 books written with a plan to do the rest of them. And then we put all of them. So we ended up with 24 books that we published last year together. And we had them all up for pre-order. And then, like I said, most of them, they were all written obviously beforehand, but most of them were well in advance because we, like I said, planned ahead to make sure that we were several books in front of whatever the publishing schedule was. So we
Mhm.
didn't have too many that were like, oh my gosh, we have to have this done in 2 days and we're still 20,000 words short kind of thing.
Right. So this next book in the series has a pre-order or does not?
It does.
It does. And how far away is that?
August.
August what?
Yeah. I think it's August 10th.
Okay.
And yeah, and of the 100,000 words, we have 120,000 words or so that we have plotted out. We have maybe 50,000 written. So
Okay. I'm putting
But
that on
we're-
your
we're both-
list.
You got this.
we're both editors, so it's pretty easy for us. Like I'll write my chapters, then she'll edit it and write hers.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of editing as we go.
Okay.
So we're not going to send it out.
Mm-hmm.
Edit. We do have some alpha readers that read through it. And then, they'll say, hey, I don't think you meant this word, but it doesn't happen often.
So Spearwood Academy, is that YA then?
It is.
Okay.
PNR. It's about dragons.
Dragons.
Paranormal romance, sorry. Yeah, it's about dragons
Cool.
and magic.
Dragons and magic. Those are hot sellers. Okay, so Catherine, before next time, you are going to, let's see, finish Eleanor's plot wrinkle.
Yes.
And the planner situation, I feel like you kind of have done. You just need to make sure that you remember to put it in monthly as soon as you get your schedule from the newspaper. So I don't know, do you need like a reminder for that, or is that you feel like you have control over that?
That part I've got. It's
Okay.
usually she'll send it to me the end of like the month. So I already know what July is. And
Okay.
I've already set up the interviews for them. So at the end of July, I'll get the August ones.
Okay. And then in terms of making time for client work, I don't know if this is helpful to you at all. Well, what I do in mine is set up on the days that I have set aside for writing or working on author business stuff when I'm not at the bookstore. The mornings I set aside for writing or working on the book. And then the afternoons I set aside time for client work. So if I don't have client work, then that's when I do email list building or content marketing or, recording the podcast or something like that. That's admin-y sort of, and, or
Mhm.
education, going through my InfoStack stuff and like finding out what's there. So that might help you build in the time for client work as it comes in.
Okay. That's a cool idea.
Let's see. And then please email your line editor and get on the docket. Even if
Yes.
she's sick, you can still send an email. She doesn't have to interact. She just has to be like, oh, that's on my radar now. I'll deal with it when I'm better, but it's still there. Okay, so you're finishing Eleanor's plot wrinkle and scheduling with the line editor and then running the passive voice report with AutoCrit.
Yes.
Okay.
So I know I have until August until August 1st for that passive voice. And I'm trying to figure out how to break it down per week of how much work to do for it.
Okay, what do you
Because-
still have well, for the passive voice, you have to run the report first and find out what you've got.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Mhm.
So but I do it chapter by chapter usually, just so it's not an overload. Or should I just do it all as one
I mean,
go?
what you're capable. I mean, what your brain likes and how this is part of your writing process that you're just figuring out. So
Yes.
if I tell you to do it a certain way, that doesn't mean it would work for you.
Because the
When
book is about 217,000 words.
That's definitely epic fantasy.
Yeah, it's a bit. So I'm trying to break it down into you have 1 month.
Yeah. So
Do you mind if I give you a suggestion?
Yes, please.
One of the things I've learned through editing is sometimes don't look at it as reading it chapter by chapter and doing the editing. When you're doing something targeted, like passive voice, or, I think I talked about last time, those feeling words that I go in and I search for and whatnot.
Mhm.
I highlight it and I jump from section to section. I don't try to read it all the way through to see how it flows. That's going to drag you down, right? Because as you're reading through it, you're going to say, I should have rewritten these things, and you're going to get caught up in doing actual editing. So this is like me talking to you as an editor, right?
mhm.
But if you go through and you target, like, okay, search through and tell me all the places where you see these passive things. And again, don't look at it as chapter by chapter. Look at it as, okay, this comes back and says, and I have no idea, I'm making up a number.
Sure.
You have 50,000 places that you have to work on. Break it up that way and say, I'm going to do 5,000, for 10 days or something like that. And only read through those spots that are messed up. Do not read the whole thing. Because if you start reading the whole thing, you're going to start doing, proof and all this other editing, and you're going to forget what you're targeting. So, like I said, don't read it chapter by chapter. Just go through and jump from each one of the spots and stick to that. And then you can go back and read the whole thing and say, okay, now does it sound right as I read through it? Because like I said, you'll mess yourself up, and it'll take you a lot longer to edit it than you had anticipated if you try to read it from the start.
Okay. And then I use AutoCrit. So with that, I don't know if you use AutoCrit or if you use Pro Writing Aid.
I use Pro Writing Aid. I was going to say in Pro Writing Aid, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if AutoCrit does this, but you can just set it for passive voice. You don't have to do the whole report of everything. You can just there's like 4 different colors. One is grammar and, typos or whatever, and sentence structure. And one is passive voice. You can just look for passive voice. And then when you run that report, it'll just highlight the areas where passive voice is used. And then you can, like Leanne said, just go and hit those things. And you don't even have to read necessarily. You just click on I don't know how AutoCrit works, but I just click on the first, thing that pulls up in the passive voice editor, click on that and it'll zoom it to that part in the manuscript. And then you just read that sentence and rewrite that sentence so it's not passive voice. And then you click the other thing and it'll zoom it to the next place. So if you get like red line to the whole thing, like this is all passive voice, then you can, take a shot, whatever, like get to a place where you're like, okay, let me gird my loins. And then just, then you could, I suppose, give yourself a task, like, okay, I'm going to fix the passive voice in these 5 chapters. And then, and then the next time you sit down, okay, now I'm going to go through these 5 chapters, or however you want to break it up. But yes, you're going to have to take that 275, or as Leanne said, like if you do the whole passive voice report and you see, okay, there's, 5,000 places where this happens. And then you could maybe divvy that up between, like divide that with how many writing days you have for the month of July, and then set yourself, okay, I'm going to have to go through this many passive voice sentences per day or whatever. You can segregate it and make smaller action steps for yourself.
That makes sense.
But without seeing the report, like I don't know what that means actually for you.
Yeah, because what I was thinking is I was supposed to go through and literally look at all the sentences that have the word was.
No. Just run the report for passive voice, because was does not mean passive voice. Yeah. It means maybe you have written it passively, like the verbs aren't as action, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's written in passive voice. Passive voice is where the action, how do we say this? The action was done to the subject instead of the subject doing the action.
Okay.
I think that's how it's written. So the ball was thrown by the pitcher is passive. The pitcher threw the ball is active.
Gotcha.
So it's just a reverse way of writing. And some people prefer to write that way because it's more lyrical sometimes, but it also can be kind of confusing and a little bit, I don't know, like when I do as an editor, when I go through and do a passive voice check, I will change some of them, but I leave some of them because I don't want to alter the author's voice too much. And sometimes, that just works. So it's not bad. It's just not great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say, make sure you ignore anything that's a quote, because if you try to make anything quote active, it actually doesn't sound natural and you'll ruin the story. So just if it's in quotes, ignore it.
Yeah.
The other
because
thing
people naturally talk when a passive voice sometimes. Yep. So dialogue, you can just ignore dialogue.
And then if you don't want to look for all your wases, maybe look for any ing words, because that's where, like, it's, was walking, you would say I walked, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you'll have a better chance at being able to put more action if you don't search for all the wases, because there's going to be a lot of them, and look for your ing words.
Okay, that's cool.
And then Leanne, so creating that chapter outline, that loose chapter outline for Ruins Book 2 might be helpful. And then what was the other thing I was going to suggest? Just more words, more drafting for Book 2. And then, if you wanted to set up that pre-order for Secrets Book 3, you could, but it sounds like you've got a lot of other things on your plate. I would definitely write some more stuff in Spearwood. The deadline's next month. So yeah, I would put some of that in there too.
Yeah. 41 days.
Spearwood. Not to
No
cause
problem.
anxiety or anything. Okay, so Spearwood Academy stuff. I mean, it's really hard with the co-writing. You do every other chapter or something like that, or do you have a protagonist that you're each writing, or what's your co-writing style for that?
Well, now that we're a little behind, we're doing every 2 chapters,
Okay.
but normally it's chapter at a time. And
And
I can tell you, if you would read any of our books, you wouldn't know which one was me or which one was her. I mean, we have such a great blended style.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So how many more chapters then you're doing 2 at a time? So how many of those would you do before the next time we meet?
Well, I know I'd have at least 2. I don't know if she gets them back to me, then I might have 4.
Okay. So I'll just say 2 to 4 chapters on Spearwood. In that chapter line. And then check out those links, for inspiration if you want, that I emailed you.
Yep.
And then is there something that I'll send you another email with this list too, but is there anything that I can do to be useful to you in the next, like before we meet? Do you need me to text you and check in with you, or what's the best way, for me to help you?
Let me get back to you on that one. Like, I need to get a little bit more organized so I can tell you, like, here's what my plan is.
Okay.
My day job, because I have a day job, I'm at quarter end, so I'm in finance.
Mm,
So it's like really crazy, and it's been really bad the last 2 weeks. So I feel like I'm like really scattered. So
okay.
hopefully with a couple days, I'll be able to like reground myself
Mm-hmm.
and get back on track.
Okay. Cool. Back on track. We like that. I just did a podcast episode yesterday on how to catch up when you're drowning.
I'll need to go
I'll have to go
listen
look
to
that
that.
up. Yeah.
Come to think of it, I had forgotten about that. I mean, I didn't forget that I did the podcast, but when you brought up the back on track, it reminded me. And then Catherine, I think we already talked about what you're doing next. Okay. Is there anything that you need from me to cheerleader kick in the pants, the Jay Thorne style?
I mean, well, we meet Thursdays for that writing sprint. You can sit there and be like, are you doing your work? And make sure I do it for those sprints.
Next Thursday, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be, so in Oregon, we have the Oregon Country Fair every year, but not for the last 2 years because of COVID. And so this is the first time back since COVID started, and I'm on one of the crews. So I'll be out there working actually. So I will not be in the
Well,
writing
in that
sprint.
case, we hit each other up in Slack, so it'll be fine.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, anything else before we end the call? Do you guys need anything or want to say anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you both for listening.
Yeah, I hope it was useful, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.